Robert Habeck, herzlich willkommen.
Tak skal du have.
I will skip the Dr. Habeck because I understand that when you're in Denmark, when people say Dr. Habeck, you think that they're referring to a dentist. So I'll skip that. And I'm truly happy to see you because I must admit, sort of the last week, I got slightly worried. Will he come? Because he's basically been on the headline of all the German newspapers due to, I guess we could call it a big discussion within the German coalition about certain issues. We'll probably return to those issues. But then I realized today, your timing is perfect. Because what has happened today in Germany is something that even Robert Habeck cannot compete with. Bayern Munich's football coach was fired. So that is breaking news also tonight. So nobody cares about basically the crisis in the German government at the moment.
Yeah.
Not many Danes master the German language. So when you became vice chancellor, I immediately thought, jetzt haben wir eine Geheimwaffe in the Danish-German relationship, because now we have a German minister who speaks Danish. And maybe we should start with that. What is actually your relationship with Denmark?
Funny to get a compliment that I speak Danish and I'm answering in English. But good evening and thank you for having me. Well, my relationship with Denmark started actually when I was studying in Freiburg and Breisgau, so the southernmost city in Germany. I was born in Kiel, or I was born in Lübeck and grown up in Kiel, and then I wished nothing more than to go south. Living in Denmark, you understand it. So I want to get close to France and Italy, and because I made the decision to read German literature and philosophy, there is not really a good reason to go to Italy or France or Spain to study German literature. So I went to Freiburg and Breisgau. This was the biggest distance I could lay between my hometown and my new life. And when I was in Freiburg, I loved the town actually. It was warm, it was near to France and Italy, and everyone was, we had a summer. Mm-hmm. But I realized that I belong in the north in a way. Mm-hmm. So it was funny, everyone was starting to learn Italian or French, and I was starting to learn Danish. In Freiburg University, yes. We had a Danish teacher there, and she's still a friend of mine. And that was the beginning. And then later on, I found out that there was an Erasmus arrangement between Freiburg University and Roskilde. So after 1.5 years, I was moving back in the north, then to Copenhagen, and studied a year in Roskilde. And then there was a second phase in my life later on when we become a writer couple. And our first 3 children were born, and we really didn't know if this will work out. We had very few money, and the future was uncertain. And we lived in a very small apartment, so we needed space. And we had given us a certain room where we would finish our first novel, and then we would decide if this was possible to make out of living. So then we had the opportunity to live in Brechts Hus i Svendborg. The German Verfasser Bertolt Brecht, the writer Bertolt Brecht, he was fleeing to Denmark when the fascism took over in Germany, and he lived there 6 years, I'm sure all of you know. Mm-hmm. The house still exists, and it's owned by the Svendborg community, and that was wonderful actually. Then I became aware how much I love the nature, even the bad weather there, and this was very romantic. And then, last step, we moved to Flensburg, near Flensburg, and then this mixed culture zone, the north of Schleswig-Holstein, I would say the south of the north, became really something I would like to call home. So then my relationship with Denmark had a firm, solid fundament, and now I'm here.
We're very happy to have you here. Og ja, du kan jo godt tale dansk, det er jo rigtigt. But we'll do this in English. But how on earth did you end up in politics? a philosopher, you've written many books, also children's books and so forth. How did you end up in politics?
Well, the question I think is, how have I started politics? And this was because we found a house. We lived near to the German-Danish border, and it was the first time after 15 years or something like that that I knew that time that this is for the next decade or maybe 2 decades some place I would call home. So the journey from Kiel to Freiburg to Roskilde to Hamburg will come to an end, and now I have a family, and now this is for the years I can overview the place I will live, and then I decided to become a party member and be engaged in politics. So this was the step, and the rest happened just by chance. If you say yes, then you easily get a career in German politics.
Okay.
But you never. But you always have to say yes. So if someone is asking you, you want to become our local party leader? Yes, I will.
Okay.
You want to become our. So you want to go to the conferences? Yes, and then it's just.
But it was something with a bicycle lane, wasn't it? I mean.
Yeah. Well, the main reason.
All politics is local.
I think it's not. This is the story everyone knows, or not everyone, but a lot of people know that we had a very small village. We lived in a very small village, and the neighboring village was something like 3 kilometers away, and all the children going to school drove on the Landweg. Was hier man? The normal street, but because it was on the village, a lot of agricultural traffic was on it. I think it was livsfarligt. It was really dangerous for the kids cycling to school there. So because there was a bike lane missing, I thought it's a good idea to go to the Greens. Well, now I'm vice chancellor and the bike lane is still missing. So, but I think, to be honest, I think the decision being engaged then that time in local politics, this is where I started. I was first the party leader and then the floor leader after a communal election.
Because you said yes.
Was made anyway. So even with the bike lane, I think I would have gone into politics, but that time I would never have called it politics, just engagement in any form, as so many other people are doing it.
Just one step back to Roskilde, because there are many students here listening to this event. What kind of impact did Roskilde have upon your sort of life, and in particular, would you recommend students here to go abroad? Maybe a leading question. To
go abroad, I would always recommend, and we had a discussion earlier the day where I think the leader of the youth organization of the steel workers or metal workers was with us, and he asked us or me, why isn't there an Erasmus exchange program for not only for students but also for the people in education, so the ones working with their hands? And actually, I think there's no really good answer for that. So the one thing I take with me, a lot of things I take with me from the day, but this one thing is asking the ones responsible for education and European relations, why shouldn't we widen up the Erasmus program? So I think this is quite unfair. And if this is not fitting to their life plan, then we have a program and nobody will use it, but this is no harm. So let's do that. Yes, I would recommend take your time. I really think that Germany and maybe also Denmark, I can't speak for Denmark, I think it's a little bit, the education system and maybe the view on being young is a little bit more different in Denmark, but this can also be because I tend to romanticize Denmark. So I don't know if this is true, but in Germany, we had a discussion 15, 20 years ago where the main point was our young people are too old when they get into jobs. And then there was a huge pressure to reduce the school time, reduce the time in university. Then we skipped military service. So at least boys, they graduated from school at the age of 19. I was 19 when I made my student exam, Abitur. Then I served 1.5 years civil service that time. So I neglected Militärseemann. I said, yeah. Then I was, I think, 21 and a half or something like that. Then I started university. Then I was 26 when I made my first exam. So this is the normal case. But now people are leaving school at the age of 17. There's no Tjeneste, Militärplicht in Germany. So they start university, they graduate with bachelor after 3 years, then they are 20. And bachelor counts as a full degree in university. And then they start working. And my personal feeling, I mean, it's your life, do whatever you want, but I think you can take a little bit more time and experience the world and yourself and do something that is giving you more knowledge than just reading books.
That sounds like a good advice as well. Before we turn to your book, Von hier an anders.
It seems like ages that I wrote.
Yeah, I'll get back to that. You wrote it in...
No, in 2021.
Before the election.
But this was, I wrote it in the COVID-19 pandemic time.
Yes.
This was the big thing, and for me it sounds like this was another world, actually.
Yeah.
So this was before Russian aggression, before the war of Ukraine, before I became minister, before this horrific 2022. So it seems it's a new book, but it seems like... But I hope you find it interesting.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. But there's one part in the book that really struck me. You are southern Germany. You've just been out campaigning. I think there's an election in Bavaria, as far as I remember.
In September, yes.
Yes, and you take the train from southern Germany to northern Germany, and it's the very same day where Germany is shut down due to COVID. And by coincidence, you meet a man on Hamburger Hauptbahnhof who said the following: "Erschießen sollte man dich. One should shoot you." How on earth do you explain this hate? And would you then recommend to young people here of entering politics, or maybe even business people who like to be Quereinsteiger and start a political career?
Yeah, this was actually the starting point of writing a book, because so many things happened together. It was the first day of the real COVID-19 crisis hitting Europe, and I was in a full hurry campaigning in Bavaria, and we had the end of the campaign should have been a big party celebration, you can call it, on the place where Bayern München normally is celebrating their football championship, the German
Marienplatz, yeah.
Marienplatz. And then we set it off, and I was trying to get a night train back to the north, and I got the last available ticket, and I was a little bit concerned that I can't find sleep because everyone is snorking around me and doing parties. And then I was alone in the whole train. I think a lot of businessmen and maybe women were traveling with the train, and they all stayed at home, so I was alone. It was, I can't say funny situation, like it was in a way fallen out of normality, and then I realized that something is happening now, something astonishing, and so I was in how do you say it? I was in an open mind mood, yeah. So I know that something is happening, but I couldn't really grasp it. And then this small incident happened at the Hamburger Hauptbahnhof, where somebody told me that he wants to see me dead, which is, I think, the wish of some Germans at the moment. But that time it was so direct and in this open mind that I just had the question: okay, I don't know the man, he does not know me. I think I'm a decent guy. I haven't done him any harm. Why on earth is he saying that to me? And this was the starting point for the book. So I had more time than normal because COVID-19, I was not traveling anymore. And then I wrote the book. And answering that question was the main target of the book. What is splitting our society apart? What is the real root for populism, and what can you do against it? And how can I not be part of the split of society. I mean, I think of myself and my party and the government that we try to fix everything, but I know very well that I've been seen as part of the problem from the other side. So the other side, which other side? How can I create another side as being the one who's trying to unite the country is maybe too much to say, but at least creating a majority for climate action and social justice and a pro-European attitude. So this is a question hard to answer, actually. So, but then I had the time to reflect on it.
And the main reason for this hate is what then? What's the root?
Yeah, I think there's not one reason alone. Of course, there are tendencies in society and politics. I think that the social media are, well, to say it politely at least, making everything louder. People are very fast in twittering and making up their opinion even before they have read the full article or have listened to the end. So this is, from my perspective, loving books, and the long story, not the best thing ever happened to social debate. Maybe social media is even the wrong word, and it's more an unsocial media. So there are different tendencies we have right now, but the structural problem, from my point of view, and this is what the book is mainly about, is more complex, and I hope it's not too irritating. But the main problem is that, maybe I can phrase it, I start with a phrase Obama has said when he left office. And I personally think he was a great president and an adorable politician. But when he left office, and this I think is counting even more for why I think he was a great politician, he was asking his staff, what if we were all wrong?
Yeah.
And I think he meant, what if I myself am creating a problem? What if me, the first Afro-American president, made Donald Trump possible? But on the other hand, what should he have done? I mean, should a country always say, okay, then better not have an Afro-American president? You don't go into politics, don't engage in progressive politics. So you can't say, okay, then stay out of it. But the complex question is, how do you create freedom and progressive society without splitting the society, without losing the ones who are skeptical and there's nothing wrong with skepticism, but if skepticism and critique becomes hate and populism, then we have a problem. So it's really a complex issue. So and then I try on the next 250 pages to find some answers.
Mm-hmm. Before we get to that, let's see what I would like to also debate here. Climate policy, obviously. I think we also need to cover Russia and Putin, and also Europe. If we start with climate policy, I remember when I was minister, I always dreaded when the new UN report would come out, because it would say once again that it's 5 minutes to 12, or maybe even worse. And well, now just this week we had another report coming out, and the headline was Die Klimabombe tickt.
Well, this is not a surprise, isn't it?
No, but how do we then get, support for climate action? We get all these reports constantly, but what actually happens? What would you then also say to the young generation here?
Well, at least on the German homepages of all the big public houses, Spiegel, Zeit, Süddeutsche, and so on, I think it's the same in Denmark, there is a ticking clock now. So we have 6 and whatever years' time, and the minutes are counting down. Maybe not minutes, but days at least. So, everyone who is surprised that the time is ticking must be blind, actually. So this is not a surprise. The good thing is that, this is the 1.5 degree, that is the measure. And I think the chance that we meet the 1.5 target is very, very little. So it's not impossible, but I would be surprised actually if that would happen. The good thing is we don't know exactly where the tipping point is. So it might be with 1.5 degrees, this is what all the experts say, that it could well be 1.6. So there's even if we are running out of time, there is no reason to stop acting, because there is a fair chance that even though we are late and we are lazy and we have missed so many opportunities and so many things are not happening fast enough, it's worth all the strength to do whatever you can, because there is a chance that this is still enough. And so the tipping point basically means that after that, we are not talking about 1.6 or 1.7 degrees, then we're talking about 3 or 4 degrees. If the climate is collapsing, then, the world is collapsing. Yeah, this is what we're talking about. We're not protecting the climate. We're always saying we are protecting the climate, but the climate does not care. The climate is actually the sum of all weather phenomena, even if it's 2 or 4 degrees warmer. What we are talking about is our own lives. We are protecting humanity and human life on Earth. So there's all good reason to be engaged in it, even though the clock is ticking. And this is what gives me strength and motivation. So we don't know really if maybe 1.5 is the limit, but maybe it's 1.6.5. So let's try to come as close as possible, and that I think is a fairly good motivation.
In your book, you raise a very important question. I quote, "How do you imagine to create bold and progressive politics without ignoring that progress and the courage to change make many people turn away, even revolt?"
Well, this is a question I just tried to explain.
Exactly, yeah. And although you just said that the book is a couple of years old, this sentence seems rather up to date, I would say, because seen from Denmark, one could say that you now, as a minister, you are caught between a rock and a hard place. On the one hand, you have the conservative, liberal voters and the editor of the tabloid Bildzeitung who protest heavily against waving goodbye to the combustion engine and the oil and gas heating system at home. And on the other side of the spectrum, well, you also have the climate stickers, Friday for Future and so forth, who claim that nothing is happening. So how on earth can you handle that? Is there Flucht nach vorne here?
Yeah, I hope I can handle it, actually.
So do I, yeah.
So, but I can describe the phenomena that is happening in Germany and maybe elsewhere as well. Definitely, it has happened there. You can always see it clear when you look at it from a distance. So, what happened in the U.S. campaign, Donald Trump against Biden, was that the Republicans were trying to make the climate issue to a cultural issue. So it's not an objective, it's not something we all have to handle with, it's something reserved for cultural minorities, something like the way we eat, the way we do holidays, the way we travel, the way we talk, whatever, the way we dress ourselves. And if this is successful, then only few have to care for climate action, and the other ones are doing whatever they do, and they criticize the ones who are taking care for climate action. And I hoped actually that in the past years we learned that this is not the right attitude, that there's not one responsibility from one party or one minister or one sector, but it's a society issue actually, and everyone has to do in his or her ability what is possible. Like standing up for democracy. You would never argue that only a liberal party has to watch out for democracy and the other ones are doing whatever they do. They're doing business, they're doing transportation, but democracy is something that is not interesting for us. You would never argue in that way. So and I think we have been there in the 2019 to 2021 years, and then the war came, and maybe you can say that Europe was never so united in the past 3 decades, maybe during that time, and for me, it feels like a reaction to this unity that we are now falling apart, and these culturalization of society issues begins anew, and this is my theoretical explanation. But I heard when you were the moderation was saying now tonight we're trying to think. So this is my thought about it, and how do I handle it, and what is my part in the game? Well, knowing that I'm coming from the Green Party, and for a lot of people, I'm the threat of the economy.
Verbotsrobert.
I try to argue in the same way we're now talking, that it's not possible to solve the issue alone. Even I would say it's dangerous to do that. Not only dangerous to the climate, which is not caring for climate action because it's the climate, but for our security, maybe you can also say for our economic growth, because the rest of the world, at least the big powers, are heavily investing into climate neutral technologies. So if we are continuing the old black path, it's bad for everyone. So, and we will see if I can succeed with the argumentation.
But you just gave an interview a couple of days ago, which I saw on German television, where you seemed rather disappointed, to put it mildly, of what's happening in your government. You said, "We have a mandate to do something for the people, for Germany. At the moment, we are not doing enough." Was that kind of a wake-up call, in German politics?
In a way.
Yeah. In what way, then?
Well, if you want someone to wake up, you tend to think he's sleeping or she's sleeping. So yes, well, we have a intense debate, to put it politely, in the government, and this is also something.
And what
good.
are you actually debating? For
everything, actually.
Everything.
And this is also fine.
Goodness, yeah, this.
Yeah, and debate is something good. I'm a fan of every form of debate, but sometimes we have to come to an end and make a decision.
Yeah.
So an eternal debate is not politics. And but my experience is that if things are really getting stuck, you have to change the level. You have to create a new form of discussion to make it possible to solve other things. And this was the attempt to play my part into that, to say, we also publicly, to say this is not what we went into government. And we will see what's happening on Sunday. On Sunday we have so-called Koalitionsausschuss. It's a meeting we have regularly where
K-udvalget i Danmark, yeah.
Okay, where the party leader and leading ministers are coming together and try to, balance the discussions and the government. So this is regularly meeting, and now we have to solve some problems.
Okay, so we'll skip Tatort on Sunday and
no, I hope not
team.
Actually, because this will definitely last a little bit longer than Tatort.
Okay.
And I hope it's not live broadcasting out of the rooms we are sitting in. So
okay.
I can imagine that this would be fun for some of you, but then I can assure you we won't find any solutions, because I know there's a need for transparency, but my experience is you also need rooms for maneuver. You need some private sphere also in politics. If everything is public, then in the public office, everything is under the perspective who wins and who loses. So if there's no room where you can test some movements, so imagine I would give you that, what would you give me, and what do you need, and how can I help you? And you're not, and you are afraid that this discussion becomes public and everyone is writing, he offered help, is this guy crazy, he doesn't know how politics is working, then it's never happening. So we need some some room where we can discuss openly, and this is difficult enough. But I think it's the only solution. That we also there, I would argue that we have to lift the level of ambition. We have to change the niveau in a way.
Yeah, and one shouldn't leak various proposals.
Well, I understand. It's the same. It's the same argument. It's a conflict of interest in a way. Of course, there's an interest of the public and maybe also of the media. There are some media experts here in the room to have information early. But if you have it, then this information early, and this is the race of the media, and the politicians have the feeling, or some in politics, maybe it wasn't politicians, have the feeling that their own value depends on giving secret information early
Trading,
to the media.
yeah.
Then this room where you can show your partners some information becomes smaller and smaller, and then solution is not possible. So, I mean, it's what the media is doing, and in a way I can say this is their job, but I can personally say for myself, it's only me, Robert, speaking. For me, the articles where someone has some secret information are not the most interesting and not the best pieces of journalism. So I would like to read the explanations, the long stories, the interpretation of our society, of our politics, of what is going on in Europe. So there might be also a success without having secret information and this hunt for leakage in politics. I hope so.
Talking about success, I mean, your government has managed to agree upon a number of
well, this is the cynicism about it. I think we are doing really, really good, or we have done really, really good as a government. Last year, I don't know if you know it, but Germany's dependency on Russian fossil fuel was skyrocketing high. 55% of our natural gas was coming from Russia. This was mainly going into the households for heating and in the industry. We had 55 or 50% of our coal coming from Russia. Coal is for the steel industry and for, sorry to say, also for the electricity sector. And 1/3 of our oil was coming from Russia. So this is, and everything is gone now. And we solved it without a breakdown of the economy. Right now, the storages are full, the prices are going down, the inflation has reached its top. We see a modest rate of growth. It's not there where I want it, but there was a threat, a real threat of an abyss. It was all the discussions about, in COVID-19, the GDP rate was going down -5, maybe 5.5%. The prediction in Germany was, or some predicted, that if we lose the Russian gas, we would see a decline of GDP of -12. So twice the crisis of the COVID-19 pandemic. That would really be a shock. So this was what was the threat, and this was a real threat. It's not fairy tale. So this was the reality last year, and all the nervousness and all the pressure under which we acted was because this was a reality, and we bent it with extraordinary measures.
I remember reading that you basically said that one should not take a hot shower, or at least that you were not taking hot showers.
Small measures, people saved.
Duschalarm.
Yeah, but it worked. We would not have been able to fill up the storages without the help of the people. I mean, this is an extraordinary story. I think it's the same in Denmark. You saved energy, -16, 17% less energy. I mean, if we would do that all the time, we would solve a lot of CO2 time-ticking problems. But of course, there was also industries who reduced their energy consumption, and that was because they reduced production. So you could see what will happen if there was no gas, but now there is no gas, and we have solved the problem by spending a lot of money, by nationalizing Uniper, by talking to the people, by
Going to Qatar.
Yeah, but this was not so successful. It's only one deal, and this is only two BCM. So this was not really big help. But anyway.
Well, at least you didn't go to the football match.
We even did. For me, the hardest decision is we had a reserve of coal power plants, very old coal power plants. Nobody wanted ever to use them again. But to save gas, we brought them in to the electricity market again. And still in 2022, the CO2 emissions in Germany decreased. So I was surprised actually to read that because of all the unpopular measures, I thought bringing back 6.5 gigawatt coal power plants would definitely lead to a higher production rate of CO2, but it didn't. So this was a very, very successful year, and I doubt that. No, I don't say that, but I think we have really done a good job there. We have made mistakes. Obviously, if you take decisions without preparation, and we were really in a hurry, it was I can remember so many moments that I thought, okay, this might be the first free weekend after, I don't know, 6 weeks or 7 weeks, and then someone called me and say, you know, there's no Russian gas coming where the pipeline has exploded, or Uniper has just given a public declaration they're losing every day 200 million euros. They will collapse in 5 days' time. In 5 days' time. So do something. And I mean, we're talking about 30 billion euros to stabilize this company. And no party convention has ever discussed it. There was no preparation for it. So we gathered on the phone, we talked it through, and then we acted. And this, at the end, it all went well. But tragically, nobody is talking about that, and we haven't gained strength out of it. Now we are talking about other things. But maybe there's a chance that we can come back to the old spirit on Sunday. This is my idea.
And since we are in Denmark, when you give talks, which I sometimes do on Germany and energy policy, then very quickly at a certain stage you have to answer the following question. What about nuclear energy? Is it now tote hose, or what will happen in Germany?
No, in I think 3 weeks' time, the last 3 nuclear power plants will get off the grid.
And that's it.
And that's it.
Yeah. No more debate about nuclear energy in Germany.
Small debate, I would say.
And
but
why?
It's over.
Explain to the audience, why is that a wise decision?
It's a decision that was taken by the Merkel liberal government in 2011 after Fukushima.
Which doesn't necessarily make it a wise decision, but yeah.
I think it's a wise, no, but it's a decision that led to consequences. The scale up of renewable energy and new grid infrastructure, and a lot of spending was done because of that. I personally think that there are a lot of unsolved problems. We don't know what to do with the waste. We have a process in Germany to find the storage for the nuclear waste. The plans go like this until 2030. We want to have no, wait, I have to think about it. I think we want to find the place where we do the storage until 2030. Then it takes something like 20 years to build up the caverns. So it's a construction down what you say, in the earth, wherever we do it. And then we start bringing the nuclear waste into the storage in 2020, in 2050, and this takes 30 years.
Yeah.
So when my children are asking me when are you rid of the problem, I would say gladly I answer the best guess in 2080. This is the reality now, and this is the best case. And now imagine how long World War II is gone. And then you see 2080, so this is definitely not a technique that in any form relies to the phrase responsibility. We have created a problem we are not able to solve in our political responsibility. Not talking about nuclear threat and Gauss and attacks and so on, so on. But personally, I think I'm also Minister for Economic Affairs, and not only for energy and climate action, that nuclear energy is one of the more expensive forms of energy. So there are...
Compared to wind and solar and so forth.
Compared to wind and solar, the investments we know about, the last investments in France, Flamanville, in Great Britain, Hinkley Point, and Finland with a name I can't pronounce.
Yeah, neither can I.
These are the last three power plants in Europe, and the construction time was always estimated with 5 years, and it always took longer than 20, and the price doubled from an estimation of 6 billion to also 20 billion, meaning that the price for electricity over a period of maybe 30 years, 40 years, would be 12, maybe 15 euro cent. We produce renewable energy now for a price of 3 to maybe 7 or 6 euro cent, and the scale down of the price, the decline of the price, is not coming to an end. So, to my French friends, I always say, okay, fair enough, it's competition, Europe relies on competition, bring it on. We meet 2030, and we will see who has the more efficient and cheap energy. And they are smiling and go back to the nuclear fleet. And these are not new nuclear power plants, they are old ones. And old ones that were created for 40 years' time, and they have now prolonged the period of usage for an additional 20 years or something like that. So I'm interested to see who will achieve the better energy system, and I'm quite sure, and I hope I'm aligned with Denmark here, because you are doing this, actually doing exactly the same. You're not building a new nuclear power plant in Denmark. I heard there were rumors that the discussion is also in Denmark, but don't do it. If you want my point of view, not because it's dangerous that you have to decide on your own, but I'm convinced that the economic sense is in renewable energy and clean and cheap renewable energy, and this is the future.
Let's move to the tragic war in Ukraine. Obviously, that's not part of your book, but the 24th of February, I read the other day that you were actually informed by the Americans. You were in a meeting, and then suddenly you got some papers that you were...
Yeah, my colleague Catherine Tai, the Minister for Trade, was in Berlin, and we met, and when we left the office, there was part of the embassy with her, or staff of the embassy, and they gave me an envelope and said, okay, tonight it's going to happen. And that was a time when everyone was aware that could happen, but reading that they're now using their blood conserves, that they are painting the Zs on the tanks, that they are opening up the heads of the rockets, and that was something else. So this, in a way, this now was becoming very, very concrete, and so this is true.
And there was absolutely no preparation in Germany, because you already covered that.
No, well, of course. I think, but I mean, can you prepare for an extraordinary moment?
No, but maybe
like
you could have thought about being so dependent upon Russian gas.
Okay, no, but I can tell the story because it's public. The head of the German Secret Service, they predicted that this was just a military practice. Yeah. So there won't be a war, and he was on his way to Kiev when the war started. So he was stuck in Ukraine because he believed his own files. And they were wrong. So of course there was an awareness that could happen, but the German intelligence argued it will not happen. This is only a minor maneuver, or maybe there might be a local conflict, but not a full-scale war. And so the Americans had other informations, and they gave them to me on that night. And the thing, I would say, the tragic thing about the storages is Germany has the highest capacity for gas storages in Europe. 1/4 of our annual gas consumption we can store under the earth. So if we would get any gas at all, we would last 3 months, about 3 months. So this is quite a capacity, and we sold it, part of it, to Gazprom.
Yeah.
As we sold also some part of our oil refineries to Rosneft. And the thing is, we sold them in the year 2015 and 2016.
So after Crimea.
After Crimea, 1 year after the first Ukraine war, if you can call it like that. I mean, it's not a Ukraine war, it's actually a Russian war, but you know what I mean. And that now, at least from our knowledge, raises the question, how stupid can you be? So,
And I guess that also goes for Nord Stream 2.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. This is the third part of the story. In 2015, Nord Stream 1 was already in operation, but then the German government made the decision, because we rely on Russia after the Crimean War, or the occupation of Crimea. We want to have a second pipeline. This was Nord Stream 2, also in the year 2015. And also this is public. Then I can also tell it in Denmark. The form of getting an application to operate Nord Stream 2 it's 2 steps. The second step is that our energy agency has to check the unbundling. So is it a European operator and so on? So they are doing the technical checks in a way. The first step is that you have a political check if this infrastructure could be a threat to the German public. And actually the argumentation is on the first hand not so easy to give. Why should an additional capacity of energy infrastructure should be a threat? It can be a threat if the dependency becomes too big. This is the lesson we have learned now. And this was the question raised by a paper that was arguing, no, there is no threat. And if you read this paper, I read it over the Christmas days of 2021 when I was minister. I was 3 weeks in office then. That time, even that time, that's what was before the Russian aggression started. There were so many open questions. If you read this paper now, it's on the homepage. It's public now. You won't believe it. So it's really unbelievable. And so this was a political decision, and it was unwise, to say the least.
And there's been lots of criticism, I would say, also in Denmark, if one now looks upon Germany's role after the invasion started. I'm referring to the sort of very slow process delivering weapons to Ukraine. I mean, I'm just referring now to what the debate has been like. But what I thought was really interesting, I mean, when one looks upon your sort of decision to go to Ukraine during the election, just before the election campaign last time, because you went at a time when nobody in Denmark, let's just be frank here, debated Ukraine, but you decided before the last election to go to Donbass, right? And you actually also came back saying that Germany should deliver weapons.
Yeah, well, the story is I met Zelensky. He visited Berlin when he was elected president in 2019.
Yeah.
Something like that. And well, there's an unwritten law that government members don't meet party leaders. So government meets government and party meets party, and parliamentarian groups meet parliamentarians. And but Zelensky, for reasons I still haven't fully grabbed, insisted on meeting me. And that was a very open moment from the beginning. So it felt good to talk to each other. This was 2019, so he was a young elected president, and I was only party leader, and still there was a dynamic, and he said, please come to Ukraine, and then 2021, I had the chance and the time to go to Ukraine. So this was the story. Then I visited Kiev, I met Zelensky as well. We had the same open, friendly talks. He explained that he has done also to me in 2019 that Ukraine, and he under his leadership wants to be a part of Europe. He is pro-European. He wants to fight corruption in his country. He gave me the feeling that he wants to be one of us, one of the young political leaders that trying to change the continent for the better, being climate neutral, being part of the progressive leadership that still is possible, I think. And with this impression that there was a serious guy, that was a time when a lot of people thought he's just an actor.
Exactly. Comedian, yeah.
A comedian and an actor, but I never felt this way. And then I traveled in the Donbass. I was in Mariupol, and I met the Ukraine troops there. They told me that they were losing men, maybe also women, but mainly men, I think, over the year, like 20, because the Russian snipers had their last education days at the Russian-Ukraine border, and they could always tell which troop were now training on them, because some were shooting in the head, some were shooting in the eye, and some were shooting in the throat. So they know exactly which part of the Russian sniper, elite troop, whatever, were now at the border. So this was the reality. And they told me stories and showed me pictures of drones, just small drones like we can buy in the supermarket, with landmines on it or some other forms of explosive. They were flying the drones over the border and dropping whatever explosive they had into the gardens of the houses, and then children were playing, women were doing something in the garden, and boom, they were losing legs or lives. So this was the reality they told me. And then what should I do? I was asking them, so any form of help? And they said, yes, give us weapons that we can shoot down the drones from the sky. And having Zelensky's words in my ear and knowing that all of Europe was saying Ukraine belongs to Europe, and the Maidan was an oprør for frihed, so freedom and all the big words, but no help, no offer to be part of Europe, no real offer. And if you talk to the soldiers, some of them dying there, at least losing comrades, or the people living in Donbass, and I was asked by a media, are you supporting the delivery of weapons that they can protect themselves better? And then to say, as my party has made the decision, no, because they are fighting for the freedom and they are part of the free world, and they're dying, and we could help them because we have the weapons to shoot down the fucking drones, but we won't give them because we have a party decision.
And because
how can I do that?
And because you have.
So I said yes, of course, and then I still have the snapshots of all the discussions. So a lot of politicians that are now, again, just forget it. So it wasn't, but Germany was not ready to deliver weapons. That's at that time, I can say.
And the consensus that we have now in Germany, will that hold if you look upon it politically?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So Germany will continue also delivering weapons to Ukraine. There's now a shift.
Yes, and we have done it in a great amount.
Yeah.
So I know that the image, maybe in parallel to the image of the coalition, is not so good, because we had the long ongoing discussions about Leopard tanks. But if you look at the numbers, we are one of the biggest suppliers, also military, for Ukraine. And because we are the Germans and we are so correct, we always count the value of the weapons for the real value. So if we send over 20-year-old Marder tanks, we're not saying they are new Marder tanks, we're saying they're 20 years old, like an old car. So actually I think the numbers, other countries are doing that not. They are counting like they were new weapons. So actually I don't think we should, there's nothing, the Leopard decision took a little bit too long, but the amount of supply we have delivered is something I'm really satisfied with.
But this nie wieder of a war, was that one of the reasons why it was so difficult for Germany to deliver the weapons?
I think so, yes.
Because this nie wieder was connected to Russia and Ukraine.
Well, I think it's something good that you hesitate to deliver weapons. So I'm also responsible for the delivery of weapons now we are selling into the world, and I think of myself as an ambitious minister. I want to achieve many things, climate action we talked about, renewable energy, scale up, whatever. But I don't have any ambition to be the minister who's selling the most weapons to the world. So I think you should be careful. And still, and I mean, you know the German history, so I have great respect for the people who are saying that they can't raise their hand for delivering weapons to Ukraine. I come to other conclusions, but my respect they have, as long as they are not saying Putin is a nice guy and they are pro-Russian. I think that would be a terrible mistake. So the ethical consequences, also the political consequences are clear. If Putin wins, whatever this means, wins this war, no country in Europe is ever safe of Russian aggressions. This is an invitation for Putin to attack the next country, maybe start the next phase of war in Ukraine, and it is also an invitation for other dictators to use military means to create a new political landscape. So this is not an option. But the moral rigidness of people saying, I can't be part of a military conflict, this is not in me, this is something I fully respect. This is not true that, I mean, these are heavy weapons. With every decision we are taking, I personally take, people are getting killed. This is completely clear to me. So this is a heavy decision, and if someone is not wanting or able to take the decision, that's something I can understand. But the argument that we won't, this is the German, not law, it's not a law, but it's a directive, and this was also my party line. The argument that we won't deliver weapons in conflict zones, that I never understood. Because in a conflict, you always have an aggressor and someone that is a victim. And being neutral to that situation means you shut your eyes and you don't look at that. So I think the right answer, if you're not so peace-loving that you can't raise your hand for delivering weapons, so like Mahatma Gandhi, this is something great, I fully respect, and the deep wish for peace is fully accepted. So the right tone in the debate is sometimes also missing for them who have the need for, who are talking about peace. So sometimes I have the feeling that there's not enough room in the debate for a more reflected way, even though this is not my personal meaning. I want to have this discussion. It's a necessary discussion. So not being hawkish all the time and saying more and more and more weapon. There must be room for the tiny voices that were talking about peace. It's over now?
No.
Or was it?
They are just.
You have enough energy.
We had energy efficiency before, and now they're just.
You have enough energy in Denmark. So, but if you say I'm willing to deliver weapons, but not in zones of conflict, that is an argument I don't understand. So let's make it concrete. I mean, we have shifted our party line completely. We are now delivering weapons to Ukraine, which is right. But the argument in Swiss, for example, is exactly like the argument that my party, the Green Party, and also the majority of the German politicians had before the Russian aggression on Ukraine. We are not delivering weapons in a conflict zone. And I mean, what is that? I mean, for me, it's hard to understand how you can stay neutral in times of fascism, which is also part of the Swiss history, but now saying this is only about ammunition. So you know that we have Gepards, some other form of tanks in Ukraine. The ammunition is gone now. Swiss has it. It's not, they don't have to deliver weapons, they only give us the allowance to deliver ammunition to the Gepards, and they won't, because they say, no, we're staying neutral and making businesses. So this is something I don't like.
When I go to Berlin, I always go to the big bookstore Dussmann, right? On Friedrichstraße.
Yeah, it's open all night.
Yeah, it's open. Yeah, it's wonderful.
It's wonderful.
Yeah,
it's
even
really
you spend your Saturday night in there, and that's fascinating. But I remember sort of going there about 10 years ago, and it was always striking compared to Danish bookstores how many books you had about Russia and also Russian authors. We basically don't have that. But now, what really struck me when I go there again, now I can see all this Ukrainian literature and all these books about Ukraine. And then, sort of being half German, I went to the school around the corner here, St. Petrus Schule, and I simply cannot remember that I was told anything about Ukraine and Germany's special responsibility towards Ukraine, Holocaust with bullets and so forth. It was Russia, 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 Russia. So is there something in the way that we've basically looked upon Russia that made us not realize that Ukraine was a separate nation?
Yeah, in a way this is true, because, and this is also an explanation for some politicians, and I think it's a good explanation, it's an honorable explanation. In the years of the Cold War, it was the Social Democrats who changed under Willy Brandt the attitude towards Russia.
Die Ostpolitik, yeah.
Außenpolitik, the neue Ostpolitik. And you know that he went to Warsaw and he kneeled down there. Kniefall. And also there were now diplomatic, they tried to build up diplomatic strings with Russia, and energy was one of the strings. So the first relation established anew was energy. And I think the lesson, this is a good tradition. I mean, why should you not work for peace? Why should you not try to help people by building up diplomatic relationships at that time?
Wandel durch Handel.
And of course, the left part of the German politics is, there might have been a time where they have thought America is too capitalistic and socialistic governments are interesting. So there's also maybe a personal affection or something like this, a created image. Then don't forget that not half of the German population, but the GDR is only 30 years gone, so we have population that was taught that Russia is the friend. So this is in them. So maybe like you think Sweden, and you are part of the northern family. You would also be, and imagine there would be a conflict in the Scandinavian region. It would be very hard for you to guess, to grab what is going on. So this is all fair to say, to accept that people have different histories, that their education, that their political socialization is part of the problems now that people have. And I personally, once again, I honor these reasons. If one is talking to me and saying to me, I see that it's not good what's happening there, but I spent half of my life in the GDR. I was always taught that Russia is a friendly country and we should look to Russia as a partner. Don't expect me now to deliver weapons to Ukraine to shoot on the Russians. I can't do that. I would, in a way, accept it. And there are Social Democrats, even now in the German parliament, who are exactly saying that. still they're doing the right decisions, but you can see it in their in the way they behave, that they are suffering. It's not an easy decision for them.
Because it's so much part of their, their
Yes.
life, basically.
So, but coming to the German history in Ukraine, Russia, Belarus, Poland, this is really complicated, and we have so much guilt on our shoulders that we really can't draw a lesson out of it. I mean, we attacked, we means Germany, the fascist Germany, we attacked Russia, Ukraine, Poland, we murdered millions of people, but both in Russia and in Ukraine. So there's no lesson to be learned out of our historical obligation to one or the other country. So, but it's so complicated. You don't know where to start to explain what has happened there, and so I think there's no. Of course, you can learn a lesson out of history. This is of course true, but getting a clear advice because of the German guilt in World War II, how to behave in this conflict is simply not possible, I think. Because it's too complicated. We have done so many bad things there, in both countries. You can't say we have to support Ukraine because we have murdered their people, their Jews as well, because we also murdered millions of Russians. You can't say we have to stay away because we attacked Russia once. There were German tanks driving towards Moscow. You can't say that because then you leave the Ukraine side away. So there is no easy lesson learned out of the guilt is too big.
But it obviously always plays a role, you could say, in German politics.
It plays a role in the inner conflict many people have, and this is. Once again, I think this is something that has a value in itself, that people have moral restrictions and they are thinking about it, but this is not the same as saying Putin is a nice guy and I can't differentiate between Ukraine and Russia. This is not the same. So my respect for all the ones who have inner conflicts and they don't have it in them to make a military decision right now, but this is not the same we are now seeing when Sarah Wagenknecht, the left-wing politician, is going to the street and trying to explain the people that actually the Ukrainians have started the war, or the Ukrainians are fulfilling American politics. So this is something else. So no respect for that.
In Germany, when you have a discussion about a book, the author always reads a paragraph. At least that's what I've experienced.
It's not in Danish.
So So I found here on page 358 a section that I found. I made it onto page 358. So if you start there, wer die Vergangenheit deutet.
So.
Now you have to have the glasses.
German?
Yes, of course. I'm not expecting you.
Okay, need glasses.
Mit Englisch kommt man durch, mit Deutsch kommt man weiter.
You all understand German? So 2 Germans speaking English on a Danish scene. So
now at the end, no.
All right.
You're being too optimistic, I would say.
So Lykke asked me to read a short paragraph out of the book, and it's going like this. Wer die Vergangenheit deutet immer auch die Gegenwart. Deshalb ist die Interpretation von Geschichte umkämpft, as I try to explain, referring to World War II. Erinnerung wird gemacht, geformt, manipuliert. Und der Kampf ist mit dem Erstarken des Rechtspopulismus dringlicher denn je. Er muss aufgenommen werden. Und für die Mehrheit gilt nicht Deutschland über alles für wenige, sondern Einigkeit und Recht und Freiheit für alle in diesem Land. Egal, wo jemand herkommt, wie sie aussieht, wen er liebt, was sie glaubt. Dieses Land ist das Beste und Freieste, das es bisher auf deutschem Boden gab. Trotz all der Paradoxien und Widersprüche, trotz des Hasses und der Tendenz zur Spaltung, keine Zeit war bisher besser.
And the very sort of short translation of that is obviously there's no time in German history which is better than the one we're experiencing now.
I think so, yes.
And could you elaborate on that? Is that the entire Germany? Does that also go for Eastern Germany?
Yes, especially
Also when you look upon the...
if you think about the last, I know, the years after World War II, especially for Eastern Germany, I know that people in East Germany are sometimes frustrated, but well, I haven't lived in the GDR, and I guess there was also fun and people laughed and met, but from my point of view, being a West German Green politician, so you have to ask other people. So I'm talking about experiences I'm reflecting, but I don't have experienced it. Especially for East Germany, now the time is better. I mean, there are conflicts and there's poverty, and now we want to phase out of lignite coal as well, but still, it's a free country, and people can vote and can talk and can travel and can do whatever they want. So yes, especially in East Germany, this counts.
We started out with Roskilde Universitetscenter, as it was called at that time, now Roskilde Universitet. We have many students here. When I studied political science, good old days, sort of the Berlin Wall tumbled down and everything. We had Central and Eastern Europe joining the European Union. This is a rather different Europe that the students now experience. What would be your sort of advice to them? How can they also influence and make an impact on the
Well, the first advice is don't listen to advices of 55...
Of old men or what?
Of 50... How old am I? 53-year-old politicians. Make your own experiences. But I can talk about Europe if you want.
Are you worried about... Obviously, I'd like to speak about Europe. Are you worried about the development? Can Europe actually expand? Can we enlarge with a country like Ukraine? We'll also have to take in the West Balkans. Can we have a European Union with 36 member states?
So first of all, worry or being worried is not my state of mind, as there might be, definitely there will come another time, but now I'm one of the ones who is responsible. So there are challenges and there are projects and there are threats, but being worried is the wrong attitude. It's now up to us to solve the problems.
Don't
and not sit there and say, oh, I'm so worried, but to find solutions, and I hope they are the right ones. And there are a lot of problems to solve. Some of them we discussed tonight. That Europe is collapsing is not my worry, actually. I think, especially in the last year, we learned that Europe is the answer and not the problem. And I hope that not so many people forget it. I mean, we have a right-wing government in Italy, but on the European level, they don't lead Italy out of Europe. They behave okay. So they are not my political friends, obviously, but they know that they will lose all influence if they would drop out of Europe or even make Europe impossible to act. The same goes with Poland. And even Viktor Orban is not leaving the European Union. He's only doing his ballot. So the Brexit was a mistake. And I think even in Great Britain this is acknowledged now. The question is, how can Europe, you ask me, should Europe expand? And I think yes, the answer is yes, but reform. So we promised a lot of South Balkan states, if you're doing this or that, you have a chance to come to Europe. And a lot of countries have done that also under big risk of political leaders. Imagine that they North Macedonian name conflict was only solved because the president put all his political leverage in calling the country North Macedonia, and he was not re-elected then. So a lot of people have done a lot of things to unite Europe, and if we would push them away now, after giving them the promise, as we have done to Ukraine actually, that would be
and
disaster.
Turkey, mind.
Pardon?
Turkey,
and to
we
Turkey,
also
yes.
promised Turkey.
Yeah, and to Turkey. So that would be a big historical mistake. We are living in a time, the big story behind this, all the small stories, is that geopolitics is back again. The time of an open one world trade sphere is not the situation we are now facing. Interests become power interests, and power interests become military interests. So if we are not using our economic and also democratic power to collect partners, we're not behaving as we should do. So yes, the answer is yes, we should be open for other member states, but we must reform.
And does that imply a treaty change?
In the end, yes, I think so. But I know that treaty changes must be acknowledged by all the governments. I mean, you are a pro-European country.
Folkeafstemning.
Even becoming more pro-European than before, if I see it right. But still, you have the Krone. Well, that's fine with me. But you know, yeah.
That's good to hear from the German Minister of Economics.
Well,
I mean, that's fine.
But you know why? Yeah. So
yes,
now it's very easy to gain votes by campaigning against something. And I mean, I'm coming from the Greens. We have also a very European skeptical history. Some of us at least have. So I know a treaty change would mean that all the member states once again will vote for a European constitution, and there's no guarantee that this is going to happening or happening successfully. So, but if I can wish, in the end, we come to something like the federal union of European countries, with the full democratic power of a government and not a commission that is in a form indirect, has an indirect democratic legitimation, but well, yeah. So I think there must be the idea of a finality of the process, knowing that this is not on stage right now. So don't get me wrong. I don't expect a big reform of the European Union right now, and I don't think that we have treaty changes right now. But we have to keep it in mind that it is a possibility, and maybe also sooner or later a necessity. But this does not mean that everything has to stay like it is. So the number of commissioners, the maybe some arrangements between the countries, this is possible, I think. And the way of Europe is doing things silently. So there is reforms, and right now in the energy crisis, I think all the countries now have accepted that Europe is in lead of organizing the overall energy system. This was not the case 1.5 years ago. So silently there was a development, and this is a good one.
I think we will invite you back for a discussion on Europe, because I think there are many items there that we could discuss, but our time is up now. Thank you for this Deutschstunde. Kind of Deutschstunde, you could say. Truly appreciate it also that you spent your time with us. I mean, you've been more or less around the world. I mean, was it Brazil, and it was Japan, and it was Colombia.
Yeah, that was a crazy week, actually.
Yeah, and now you have to have that very, very important meeting in the German coalition, which we will follow after we've seen Tatort. And talking about Deutschstunde, I had the pleasure many years ago moderating Siegfried Lenz, so he was sitting in your chair.
Here?
Yeah, here. I never forget it, because afterwards his Danish wife from the island of Fynen sent me, several years after Siegfried Lenz had died, she sent me this book which was published after his death. It was apparently a manuscript that they found, and then she wrote in the book, a gift from Siegfried in the book. Don't worry, I'm not expecting the same to happen after this talk, but I definitely hope that you will at a certain time have time again to write books, I mean also novels, and then we'll also invite you back to speak about those. So tusind tak.
Can I?
Yeah.
Oh, wait a moment. As you said, a gift from Siegfried, there's one funny story. I always wondered about the word gift in Danish, German,
gift.
and English.
Oh yeah.
So being married, giving a present, and being poisoned. So, I always wondered if there's a connection or not. So.
Do think about that the entire
funny,
weekend.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.